want something as simple as Google SketchUp inside of Nuke. So what we do is you plug in a camera also into the model builder, but now what I can do is I can go in and I can pick what kind of shape I want to draw. So for example, I want to start out drawing up a card or a cube, or for example right here I'm going to use a polygon. So I can go in and say, do a polygon, and then I can just go and start drawing on here. And now what I have to do is just go through a few frames and kind of just make sure so it can kind of triangulate where it is in space. So I can right click and just go and grab points and kind of move them around. And now if I actually go into 3D space, I'll actually get a nice shape for that. And if I go with here and turn on texture, I can go and pick a frame. So I can pick a master frame that I want, locked frame of, for example, frame 1. And now we'll project onto that surface. So again, this is really nice for doing 3D set extensions. Back into this guy. I can also continue to draw other things like if I want to do a card or a cube, I can just go in and just create a card, and then from that card I can just start placing it, and it kind of tries to triangulate where it is in space. That. So I still need to go and add a few more keyframes for these points. The nice thing is it's just a really nice kind of image modeler, kind of taking the image modeling a few steps forward. And inside the image modeler, you kind of have a little tree there, so you can have the different objects in there. You can also pick, the frame again in here for the projection. Have a bunch of different options for the defaults for how many rows and faces and stuff on a card, cube, and things like that. Also, inside of here, inside of the actual 3D view, I have additional options where I can actually right-click and I can go to edit mode. And then under edit mode, I can go and do stuff like I can do carve. So I can say, I can kind of, start drawing additional polygons and slicing this thing up if I want it. I can also do extrusions. So I can go in and say extrude, and I can actually probably want to have an edge first. So I can select this edge and then extrude that guy. So it's pretty powerful. It's a nice little tool. I hope to see a lot of people using it in the future. Let's see. Okay. So the next thing is the camera tracker. Oh, I'm sorry, not the camera tracker, the 2D tracker. So not a lot of people have done much with the 2D tracker in quite a long time. If you look at our old one, the old one we were kind of limited to 4 tracks. And you had to create many of them over and over again. So if you ever use Shake, Shake would let you create as many tracking points as you want inside of a single tracking node. So we've kind of added that same thing inside of our tracker too. So can go in and let's say I'm going to go to this point, and let's say I want to track up here. We have this new mode of tracking. It's kind of it's just called key tracking. So it's up here. So what you do is you just give it a couple of guide points where you want it to track. So I would start here, and you go a few frames forward, kind of set it here, and you get these nice little postage stamps up in the corner to kind of show you your different key points. There we go. So what I do is I now do this option right here. It says key track all. And what it'll do is it'll kind of, and you have this option right here for kind of showing errors that you can turn on and off. And this will show kind of where it didn't do too hot. So obviously it didn't do hot everywhere. So what you can do is you can go right here where it failed immediately because the motion blurred really, really fast. So if I just go in, oops. If you go in and move this point, it will just immediately try to retrack from that point forward wherever it went red. So go here, do it again. And slowly, we'll get there. Oh, that's what I got really wrong. So it just makes it much faster for doing your 2D tracking of correcting and fixing, because it just keeps on going and trying to correct every time. In addition to having this nice little option, in here I can go, as I mentioned earlier, I can have as many tracks as I want. So I can go in and add a huge, whole bunch of these. And then I can actually go through and select all these tracks, and I can do things like I can do a really quick average, and it will just create a new track that's averaged between all those tracking points. Also, I can select up to 4 points, and I can create a corner pin on the fly. So I can say, create a corner pin, and that will just create a linked corner pin. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Sorry, I was trying to think if there was anything else. Those are the big ones. Okay. So, if any of you have done any kind of stereo conversion, and you've done lots and lots of roto, one thing you might have run into inside of NUKE's roto is once your files get, in the, hundreds of megabytes, it can get very, very slow. So one of our goals was to take the roto and make it so it can handle 1 gigabyte roto file. We actually had a customer that gave us an example. Gave us this 1 gigabyte file and said, I need you to take that and make sure that's usable inside of NUKE. How they made that 1 gigabyte file, I don't know. In the first place, but...
The legend says thank you.
Oh, yes. So, yeah, a lot of the fixes for the roto is under the hood. So, you're not going to see immediately a huge amount of things on top, but under the hood, the big thing was making it like a third of the size. Also, if you have a gigabyte file, you can go in and move points and offset points and on the actual roto, which is very important, again, for those stereo conversion companies. In addition, for if you're doing any kind of stereo roto, so for example, this shot here, this is from Transformers 3. So if I were to go and create a roto on this guy, I'm just going to do a small part because we're going to want to watch paint dry. We have this nice little option here called stereo offset. So what I can do is I can go in and split off the right knob, and I can then just do like, so I have the left eye and the right eye. I wrote it the wrong eye. Sorry. So if I go with my rotor with the left eye, I can then go in the right eye and then just do, slight offsets on that. And the nice thing is this makes it so I can still continue to use, for example, the transform tab for attaching this roto to a tracker node, for example. Also, like the old Bezier node, I can go in here and I can right-click and say, split off right. So now when I split off right, I still have a single roto, but now if I go into between my left eye and right eye, I can make changes to my right eye, and it's the same roto in here, but under the hood it's actually two separate pieces of roto. So kind of useful that you do all your roto on your left eye, and then you can just do the stereo offset, and then just start doing little tweaks to the right eye to kind of fix the roto. Just makes it faster and easier. Or, as we have it here, faster, better, stronger. Okay. Using the spline warper. So we revisited the spline warper for 6.3. We got as far as we could with it for 6.3, but there were still a few things missing. So originally, the previous one, when you actually did the source and destination for your warping, it was like a feather on a roto, so you didn't actually have two separate splines. So now with the current one, what we did was we added the option to just have two separate splines. So if I go in and add a spline warp, and I have these two lovely people here and here. What I can do is I can go in and start rotoing him, and I can have two separate roto artists working, and it doesn't matter the number of points at all. I can have one person rotoing his face, and then I can have another person going in and rotoing her face here. And I'm just going to add as many points as I need. Because you always need that many points for roto. And the nice thing is what I can do is I can go into AB here now, and I have this option called Join Tool, and I can just pick a start point and an end point. The nice thing is I can go in and I can have these correspondence points. That's a book. And I can kind of actually pick where I'm warping to and from. So now there are two separate splines. If I do my roto inside of the roto node and then copy and paste it into here, I can copy and paste two separate rotos and then join them together after the fact. Also, the actual warping can be separate. So if I have multiple different warp points, so let's say I have or different warp shapes. So if I go in and I make a separate one for his eyes. And then on her eyes. Okay. And I will fix these. Yeah, obviously still a little buggy. But what I can do is I can actually have a separate board that I can animate for each set of work endpoints. So in the end, when you spend lots of time on it, you could do something like this right here. And you do that with many different shapes. Yeah. So let's see, I've got a few minutes, like 10 minutes left. Okay. Let's see what I have time for. Also, Primat 5 is now included, so I can just show you something really quick with this. So this is a nice shot from DD that they were kind enough to give us from X-Men. So Primat now has a few different, it kind of has a lot of tools built into it now. They added even more things, and you can kind of like use multiple Primat nodes together. So they have things like adjust lighting, so it kind of has a built-in thing for flattening out the kind of green screen. So it kind of pre-treats the green screen to kind of make the green all even. Also, there's stuff for their hybrid render and making core mats. So they kind of built in making core mats inside of the Primat node. And there's a bunch of other nice little kind of fine-tuning for core mats and outside mats, and it's all kind of built into the Primat. And one thing that the guys at Primat, they showed me that the auto compute supposedly works really, really well. I'm not going to try it here for you live, but try it on your own. Let me know if it actually works. That'd be awesome if it does. And another nice thing is that we have now support for EXR2. So EXR2 was announced at SIGGRAPH. It's still technically in beta. So right now we're only adding support for EXR2 for deep support. So if you guys have ever seen anything with a deep, so the big thing with deep is, for example, I have this shot right here. So this is a shot with smoke, with transparency, with a motion blur, and if you ever do any kind of Z compositing, it just doesn't work. You have to do a whole bunch of pull-out maps. It's a lot of work to actually get this to be able to render multiple different objects in different passes and kind of combine them together. And you end up having to do a lot of re-rendering of those pieces and parts. So Deep solves that by actually giving you multiple samples of each pixel. So if I were to go and look at the individual passes I have for this guy, so I have just the tubes, I have just the rings, and the bar, and I have the motion blurred walls, and I have the separate smoke. Yeah, the separate smoke path. And the smoke pass was done inside of Beanie, and all the rest of it was done inside of Maya. Now, previously, if you wanted to composite all those different layers together, you would have to pre-bake out all your holdout lines into the actual render pass. So the tubes, I would have to actually, cut out where the rings are. Same thing with the rings. And here's the balls. So essentially pre-cutting out all those little parts and pieces. So with Deep, what this allows you to do is I can just render one beauty pass, and inside our kind of Deep tool set, I can merge these all together without creating those, or without actually burning in those passes. So here I have, for example, I have the rings, I have the tubes, I have the bar all as one big piece, and then I can just merge them inside a Deep pass, and they'll properly combine together inside. And I can even look at that inside of almost in 3D space, actually interpreting that. First, before I do that, we have this bar right here at the bottom that's kind of hidden. Most people don't know it's there. It was added in 6.3. Where you can actually sample over the image and see the deep layers, like the deep pixels. And this allows us to actually create almost like a 3D representation of this in space. So I can remember, oops, that's the particles. There we go. So I can actually create a representation of that in 3D space, and that's what and I can properly composite it in Z. So also I have the smoke from the Houdini pass, and I can see the merge of them all together. So what we do is we have these nodes called deep holdout nodes. And what this allows us to do is, for example, with the smoke, I can hold out the tubes from this smoke pass. And also there you can also see all the different values of depth from the smoke. So I can actually take this and subtract from it and create a holdout on the fly. So you can see this is very useful if you have a lot of particles, if you have a lot of smoke, you have a lot of trees in depth. And I can also even transform the objects in space. So for example, in this one, I could actually push this, back into space. Oops. So that's what's very useful about Deep. So the big thing is now EXR2, with EXR2 coming out, you'll be able to get Deep files from most of your 3D renders in the near future. Previously, we only supported RenderMan's dtext format, but now as of EXR2, you'll probably be able to get things out of, or get Deep renders out of V-Ray, get them out of probably Mental Ray, get them out of Arnold. So majority of the different renders out there will be able to render Deep files. The only issue is, one of the caveat, is the files do get very large. So for example, this smoke, this is like 450 meg per frame. And I've heard some people say they have Deep volumes that are in the compression and can get your file down to about half or a quarter of the size. So these files go from 450 meg to 220 meg per frame. So that's your trade-off for being able to change things forever. Anyways, that's all I have time for. I have some t-shirts for any people that, so feel free to throw up your hand. Hey Steve, what's up?
You showed the image-based model with a clip and a track camera. Can I also do that with a static photograph and a locked-off camera?
Can you use it with what?
A static photograph and a locked-off camera. So
No, it only, oh, yes, yes.
Theoretically,
You can, yes, you can.
okay.
But where it is in space is going to be a guess because you only have a single frame camera.
Of course, of
Yes,
course. But
you can.
you know, the projection is conical and, okay, good. Thank you. Oh, I get a t-shirt. Excel.
Excel? I have one here somewhere.
Just 2 Excel.
There we go. That's what that's Steve. Any other questions? Yeah.
You need to have that render in C, right, in sampling to apply to the content.
You have to render the